Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today at ATC Hangout. My name is BK. Today we'll be hanging out with one of the most talented and experienced persons on the sourcing circuit. She's been in the sourcing trenches for some of the world's leading brands, such as Starbucks and Microsoft. She's also spoken at numerous events around the world and is highly sought after by organizations who are keen to improve the diversity of their workforce. And she's none other than Carmen Hudson. Hey Carmen, how's it going?
Hello there. I'm glad that we were finally able to do this across
Yes.
many time zones.
Yes. So, Carmen, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? How did you first get involved in recruitment?
Oh, sure. Many years ago, in different century even, I got started just as a junior sourcer at an executive search firm. And at that time, I was not very familiar with recruiting at all, but I fell in love with it. And so I started as a researcher and sourcer and moved eventually into corporate recruiting. And once I moved out to Seattle, I ended up working for some pretty well known Seattle companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks, and spent a little time in Silicon Valley working for Yahoo as a recruiting leader. And it's my passion. It's what I love to do. It's what I do best. And so this is where I am.
Cool. You're known as an expert for sourcing for diverse talent. Could you explain what does it mean for organizations to have diverse workforce in today's globalized and highly connected world?
That it's gosh, that's a it seems like a simple question, but it's really a complex question. And what I do now is I'm a consultant for a company called Recruiting Toolbox, and we work with all kinds of companies globally. And what we've learned is that that word diversity means many different things to many different organizations, and then individually to many different managers. But if you were to take a look at your global Fortune 500 companies, um, they have locations everywhere. So that diversity might mean bringing in people who speak various languages, or it might bring in someone with a specific set of cultural knowledge, or someone who can help them build products for specific populations of people. So diversity has that broad meaning. If you are sitting in Silicon Valley right now and you have a fairly large yet new tech startup, diversity might actually mean bringing in racial and ethnic diversity into your organization. So before even starting the conversation, you have to really kind of split hairs and find out what's actually on the table and what people really mean when we talk about diversity.
Right. So, do you find that there is an overfocus on gender diversity these days?
Yes and no. I would say there is a huge focus. I don't know if there's an over focus. I think, until organizations can report that there's pay equity, then of course there's going to be more focus on it. But also just looking at professions where women are not represented in, either because the talent is not there or because they have been looked over or passed over in some instances. It's something that we just have to look at. And just coming from this past weekend where women in the U.S. Organized all over and to assert their thoughts on equity and women's rights. I think it's an important issue to take a look, and I think we have to look at unfairness and shine a light on all of it. We can't necessarily decide that we're not going to look at unfairness in one corner and focus on another. We really do have to look at it as an overall problem in an organization if it's there, and figure out how to fix it.
Right. So, what are some of the biggest challenge facing recruiters who are trying to attract and hire diverse talent, and what advice would you give them?
I think we take on too much as recruiters. It's not a simple problem, and this used to happen a lot when I was in corporate. As a corporate recruiting leader, an executive or a manager would determine that more diversity was required in a certain part of the organization, and the first approach would be, let's get recruiting to find more diverse candidates. And I think that's one approach in a number of approaches. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in my presentation. Really stepping back as recruiters and standing up for ourselves, because sometimes it's not a recruiting problem. Sometimes it's a promotion problem, right? Moving people through the organization. Sometimes the organization isn't really equipped to handle diversity. And I use the example of organizations who want to hire people with physical disabilities, but if you haven't made the accommodations, it's going to be very difficult to have someone join your organization and stay if you haven't provided the right kinds of accommodations. That's not necessarily a recruiting problem. We can help amplify those problems and probably help solve those problems, but we don't necessarily own those problems. So I think as recruiters, we have to start to think about who else should we bring in to the problem solving session and figure out what it is that we need. Sometimes it's a competitive session. So if you are looking right now to hire female engineers and we know that there are not very many female engineers in our geography, then you have to become a lot more competitive to get those female engineers into your organization. And then you have to start to think about other things such as pay equity. So it's not always a simple question of let's go recruit more. It's actually let's look at the root, the problem we're trying to solve, and then the root of that problem.
Oh, that's really good advice, Carmen. And well, speaking about presentations, we know you'll be speaking at the upcoming Sourcing Social Talent Conference in Auckland, Melbourne, and Sydney. Could you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from you?
Well, I think I'm gonna challenge the audience a little bit because I think, again, I really do believe we take on too much of the problem and we really try to go at it with typical recruiting and sourcing approaches. And some of that we actually, sometimes we just have to roll up our sleeves and do that work. And that's the stuff that I love to do. But sometimes we have to step back and think about it as a larger, sometimes even social issue that it's not our job to solve, right? It's our job to sort of help point out and direct maybe organizations in terms of what they could be doing. But I think sometimes we have to be a little bit more plain spoken about diversity. I think we have to be accepting of the challenges that it brings and to really be honest about whether or not our organization are ready to accept diversity into the ranks of the employees and also really to be very frank about the problem that you're trying to solve. And having those conversations can be difficult and they can be uncomfortable. People don't always know the right words to use. And so I will probably say some things that will shock people, but I have fun doing
it. I'm pretty sure our audience here will be looking forward to that. Cool. Thank you very much, Carmen, for spending time with us today. And we really look forward to seeing you at the SST 17 in less than a month's time, I think.
Yes, less than a month's time. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's already here. I'm excited. It will be my first trip down under, and I hear you guys like all the things that I like wine and coffee and sunshine.
Yes, we do. And I'm pretty sure we have a lot of talk about then.
Absolutely.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you, Carmen, for your time. See you soon.
Signing off.